Are you new to food photography and looking to improve your images? Well, I've taught thousands of food photographers how to take better photos. And in this video, I'm going to share my best beginner tips. Hi there, I'm Rachel Koronek, professional food photographer, helping you take incredible photos that are good enough to eat. So I've had 10 years worth of creative discussion within our community. And photographers come up against the same things. And these are my best tips because they're actually going to improve your work when you start out more than anything else. These tips are all actionable. And if you put them into practice today, you're going to have better photos tomorrow. Sound good? Let's get into it. So my number one tip for new food photographers is to not shoot horizontal. You want to flip that camera around and shoot portrait orientation. Food requires height. It requires room. So in order to seamlessly compose scenes and take photos that don't feel cramped or stifled, it is much easier for you to do portrait. My second best tip is when we're creating a scene from nothing, when you're starting out, is to work with less space. So when we start out in food photography, we usually have this big wide scene and we just add too many things to the frame. We'll just add anything because we can't have space just sitting there empty. So my tip for you is to either get closer to your food or use a narrow lens so that you're composing less of a scene. That way you can really focus on the props that you have that work, focus on how beautiful the food is, and you don't have to worry about filling those blank spaces. This next tip is something I did for years when I started out, and that is to shoot a range of apertures every time you pick up the camera at every photo shoot. The reason this is going to help you is to understand the best aperture and depth of field for different food subjects and different angles, but it's also going to help you understand what you like to help you hone your creative style. So start at an aperture, whatever your highest is, like 1.8, 2.8, and just roll through every aperture until you get to something like f8 through to f11. And then the beauty of popping it into your editing software like Lightroom or Capture One is you can compare all the apertures and see what really stands out for you. My fourth tip is to get rid of the rule of thirds. And instead, I want you to use the compositional guide, the Phi Grid. Now this is a golden ratio and is going to be much more visually appealing and it's going to be much more aesthetically pleasing than the rule of thirds. So the reason that a lot of people start out with the rule of thirds is to just get us to move away from putting every single thing in the middle. And that's what we tend to do as new photographers. And then we get stuck in the rule of thirds. So try the Phi Grid instead. Now with the Phi Grid, you want to make sure again that you're placing important subjects on intersecting lines. If you're interested in learning more about compositional grids and guides, make sure to check out the extra resources in the description below. Let's talk about color for our next tip. So food photography is a very colorful niche. In fact, color in food photography is so important. Now, when I started out, I just added way too many colors to the frame. So if you're wondering what colors you can work with, color theory is something you can lean on. And if you're just getting started with color theory, I recommend to use complementary colors. That is when we're using colors on the opposite sides of the color wheel to create a really harmonious feeling. I do have a number of videos on color theory. You can check them out in the description below and really dive into honing the beautiful colors that we have within our food. Tip 6 is something I share with my students all the time. If they come to me and ask me to critique a photo and then like something feels missing, it doesn't feel quite finished, it is always because there isn't enough crumbs and mess in the scene. Those little details just tie the whole scene together. Think about any time you create food in the kitchen, you create a recipe, or you plate it at the dinner table, there is always crumbs and mess. We're really trained to look for that. So when you're finished your scene, just add a bit of crumbs, a bit of salt, a little bit of pepper, a little bit of garnishes, a splash of juice or water or whatever liquids you're using. It's really going to elevate your photo. Really simple, but really powerful. The lenses are the focus of the next tip. Is that really cheesy? Well, blame my husband. He wanted me to say that. But seriously, lenses are a hot topic. And when we start out, we don't have a big budget. But I do recommend a macro lens. It is key for food photography. So save up your budget. And if you can, get a narrow macro. So that could be anywhere from 90 millimeters, 100, 105, depending on your brand, Or if you're shooting a crop sensor, that would be a 60mm macro. That is going to help you take beautiful 45-degree shots with those up-close details, those gorgeous depths of field, and it's going to help you take advantage of compression, which is going to help you to be creative and also get those beautiful magazine-worthy photos. Can you believe that we've made it this far? We haven't talked about lighting? Well, that's what I'm going to talk about for my next tip. Now, when we start out, we want to add light to the scene, and then we get to a place where our photo just looks flat. So this tip is about removing light. So you want to make sure that you are enhancing shadows by adding negative feel or taking light away from your scene. So focusing on enhancing and defining the shadows in your scene is going to help you create dimension. It's going to reveal form and texture, which is so important in a 2D image. The next tip is a flow on from that tip. And to really shape your light, buy inexpensive foam boards. Now you want white ones and you want black ones. You want the white ones to add light to your scene, to reflect light back onto the food, and you want black ones to take light away or create negative feel so we can really bring out those shadows. I have a collection from small to huge boards that really help me shape my light. They are so inexpensive and easy to store. Lighting is such a tricky subject for new photographers, and a lot of the time we're shooting in our house and we want to shoot next to a window. So if you're confused about which direction the light should come from, just default to side light. So side light is where we have light either coming from the right or left-hand side of our scene. Side light is really easy to use, really easy to manipulate. It's very flattering for nearly every food photography subject. So when in doubt, default to side light. If you're interested in learning more about the basic lighting setup, you can check out more resources I have in the description below. Backgrounds are the backbone of our food photos, and it's so important to get them right. So my tip for backgrounds when you're starting out is to make sure that you invest in backgrounds that have texture. Texture in backgrounds helps to make the photo feel realistic. So when I started out, I didn't have a lot of money. I was buying backgrounds that were very flat and had no texture at all. I quickly learned that I had to invest in better quality backgrounds, and it instantly transformed my photos. Now you can make your own textured backgrounds for really cheap. And if you're interested in that, I have a DIY blog post on how to do just that. For my last tip, it's something I have to remind food photographers of all the time, and that is it is okay to buy food to take photos of. So that could be gorgeous artisan breads or freshly baked goods, even gorgeous seasonal produce that you don't have to spend time cooking. Eliminating the step of cooking the food is going to help you put more time into your photography skills. And the more time you have to practice your photography skills, the better you're going to get. If you're ready to expand your passion in food photography with pro tips, resources, and classes, you can join my newsletter, check out the blog, or subscribe to this channel. It's one of those days. Soundlets good?
Sounds good.
Is that our baby? Oh, yeah.